welcome to Seek, Go, Create. This is your host, Tim Winders. This is where we redefine success in leadership, business, and ministry. We share topics, stories, and conversations that allow us to rethink how we live, work, and lead. I'm your host, and welcome. This is going to be a really cool episode today, and we're kind of starting a series of episodes that I'm excited about because I get to talk to some people that are near and dear to me. They're part of the team, I guess, at Seek, Go, Create. They're also part of the family for the most part. We kind of do a lot of things with family. So anyway, gonna be interviewing Hunter Irving and chatting about a lot of cool stuff. So before I get to Hunter, though, real quick, I just want to let you know we want to hear from you. If you have not connected with us yet via email or on some of our social media platforms, make sure after this wraps up that you go do that. You can just go to seekgocreate.com. Give us your best email address. If you haven't visited there, we'll connect with you and we'll just keep you updated on what's going on and let you know when episodes released. So make sure you do that. We're on all the socials and so make sure you visit us there. So listen, this is going to be so cool today. Hunter is so many things to me and this team. He's a friend. I consider him a friend of mine. He and I have known each other now for probably approaching 5+ years. Well, we may tell the story about how we met. That's kind of cool. And he also helps with the business. He does a number of things here, and he's got his own business that he does. He's in sales. He's also got a background in ministry, and we're going to be talking about a lot of that. But listen, let me just go ahead and start off with the big deal, okay? He is married to my daughter, and he is the father of the granddaughter, Aderie. So above all else, that's what he is to me. So Hunter, welcome to Seek, Go, Create.
Hey, I'm excited to be here. That was a good intro. I like that. Yeah,
Did I get the order okay? Is the order okay?
Yeah, no, that's a good timeline. You got it right. That's broke it down real well.
All right, good. Well, one of the things I usually ask, and I kind of like to stick with this formula, is kind of before I launch and just start my questions and things like that. Hunter, I like to say, in your own words, what do you do? If somebody bumps into you and you're out and about, or I know you have a lot of things, you wear a lot of hats, but just for the audience, what do you do, Hunter?
Yeah. No, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth. Like I wear a lot of hats. I do a lot of different things. I've kind of just grown up that way, even from when I was a kid going into graduating, and I always wanted to do ministry. I helped my dad with his HVAC business in between high school and college, and just kind of seizing the opportunities in front of me. I would say that I'm an opportunist, but to break it down a little more definitively, I'm a father, I'm a husband. I am a follower of Jesus. And then I do some sales on the side. I do some website management on the side, and, do all the things to sustain the family as well. And I think that, I've always loved vision. I don't want to call myself a visionary. I think that might be a little prideful. I don't know. But vision and looking ahead, and just seeing what's in front of us, and how we can get there, I think is also very deep within my bones and my soul.
Yeah, that's good. There's a lot of things. In fact, I'm already taking notes here because I had a couple of questions. I actually love doing interviews where I don't know people well. It's actually kind of cool, though, when you know people, because you can ask them things you probably have never discussed or talked about.
Yeah.
Just in your talk there are about 3 or 4 things I'm going, ooh, I'm never asking these questions. I'm gonna ask this. But so as this is releasing and as people are listening to this, though, we are wrapping up 2020, and kind of as we finish up, I'm going to kind of ask you, with all the wisdom and all that you have, to kind of share with us what you're looking at as you head into 2021. That's kind of the theme of all of our episodes that we're doing with our team during this month, or during these episodes that are primarily in December, late November and December. But 2020 has been a big year for you. And I think the biggest thing is probably becoming a father. And so
Absolutely.
before we even go any further, talk about what has happened to Hunter because he is now a father.
Yeah. I have definitely become a lot more selfless. It's kind of funny. I was thinking, okay, me before Atari versus me after, and my lifestyle was a lot more selfish because I could kind of live and do, of course, within the boundaries of being married and being accountable to my wife. I could kind of live and do whatever and flow however I wanted to. Um, but now uh, the decisions that I make not only affect myself and my wife, they affect my daughter as well, and my family. So that's just like it's a lot heavier, not in like a bad way, but you just weigh your decisions a lot more. I think I'm a lot more tactful in my approach to life. Because I mean, I think you know this well enough about me. I've always kind of been a fly by the seat of my pants kind of personality. I like planning, and I think that I know that there's value in that. But my natural tendency is to kind of just be, let's just flow. How can we flow and just do? And I can still do that as a dad, but there's definitely a lot more structure necessary. And I think I just weigh my decisions a lot more because they impact a lot more now.
Yeah, I love that. I love that selfless versus selfish because I always said when I became a father first time to your wife Dulcie that it's like, I don't think I realized how selfish I really was. And also I kind of got this glimpse from a spiritual standpoint of how maybe how God looks at us a little bit more. I had a better understanding of that. And so, well, I will say this, and I want to just say, it has been so cool for Glory and I to watch both Dulcie become the mom she is, and for you to become the father, because it's just, you kind of recognize when just great things are happening. And so, anyway, great job. And you're just getting started, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. We got a lot more ahead of us. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
doubt, no doubt about that. Yeah. So there a lot of different things kind of floating through my head here. I guess one of the things I would love to do is I'd like to back up a little bit.
Okay.
And I would love for you, this is going to be an interesting, hopefully it's not awkward. I'd love for you to tell the story of how we met, how, where, and when, and then maybe we'll give a little bit of how that cool story happened, and then before we kind of jump into all that's going on now and where you're headed for next year, I'm going to ask you about some values that you got from your parents growing up. So first off, though, tell the story, your perspective on how we met.
Yeah. So just for some context, I'm barely 19, 20 years old. I grew up in Virginia, move out to Colorado for Bible college, move out with my parents. Well, my parents are helping me move out. And we're in a apartment complex. I have another guy I'm rooming with. We're both the epitome of punks, we're just these young guys that we don't know what we're doing. And so we move in, and Tim is actually in the same apartment complex, the same building, just like like north east of us. And my dad is a very outgoing individual, just as Tim is. And so I think they linked up, and they're talking while we're moving all this stuff in. And Dad's like, "Hey, you need to meet Tim. He and his wife are going to Karis too, and they're gonna carpool and all this stuff." And we're just kind of like, "Oh, cool. Hey, really didn't think anything of it. We're in our own world, And I I recall this very clearly. I remember you were like, "Yeah, I'm just right up here. I'm watching you guys. I can see you through my window here in this other bedroom." And my roommate and I looked at each other. And we're like, "That's a little creepy, but okay, he's nice." And I think you said, "Hey, we're gonna carpool some people up 7 or 6:30 is when we're heading out. We're like, nah, there's no way we're getting up that early. And that was kind of it. I mean, it was, it's funny because I think a lot of people really love the fact that I met my wife's parents before I met my wife. So I knew you guys well before I knew Dulcie. I mean, I knew you guys for over a year before I met Dulcie, which is kind of funny. That's a unique thing. But then as you know, as the time goes by, I really saw you for our class as kind of a shepherd, because there's a lot of people that have no idea what they're doing, kind of like myself when at school, especially in first year. And you definitely helped guide a lot of people along. And although I was definitely more on the outside looking in, that's one thing that I always noticed. You and Glory both very shepherding. I mean, you were just looking out for people, even when it came to making sure we got our tests in or our study guides or all that fun stuff. But yeah, that was our first interaction.
That was cool. Yeah. So we met at Bible school, and then I think about a year or so later is when you actually met Dulcie, because she came to school there in Colorado later. And we won't go into the conversations we had when all of a sudden y'all started dating. But I do want to ask something, and you and I've had some of these conversations before, but you went through an incredible growth phase. I observed it. Others observed it from like year one. I don't know if you're like 19, 20 years old or something like that, to your second year. And then that was sort of a time that you and Dulcie started getting interested in each other. And I would love for you to, because I'm always fascinated by growth. We talk about redefining success here. And truthfully, you redefined yourself to me over the course of about probably 3 or 4 months. You were away during the summer. Can you talk a little bit more about that and maybe give people, so it's not me sharing, you mentioned you and another guy were a punk your first year, but a little bit of what your mindset was. You were in a Bible school, okay? But then from like year 1 to year 2, what happened? And just kind of share that. I think the audience would get a kick out of that.
Yeah. So I've always been in church all my life. Grew up in the Baptist church. We kind of branched out, youth groups, all that, all that stuff. Got into leadership in youth groups, and then really knew that I wanted to pastor. And my dad really wanted to push me into some sort of schooling, kind of that I didn't get the schooling, but you could get the schooling kind of mentality from my dad. And I was never a scholar. Just like school wasn't my tip top thing, but decided to go to Karis eventually, which again, hometown, Virginia, jump all the way to Colorado. I didn't know anyone there besides the roommate who I briefly knew. And I think that a lot of what I went through in my first year was probably a bit of an identity crisis, because I left the nest. I don't have that comfort of familiar friends or even parents kind of hovering over me or anything like that. It was just all me on my own. And I think I had to, I don't know if find myself is the right word. I think I had to read some of my steps in life, because I think that when I moved, I really regressed back, and I lost confidence and vision for myself, and I kind of just got caught up in myself. And I think that I had a hard time getting out of that in the environment that I was in. So that was probably change number one for me, was when first year ended. I changed my environment. I got myself out of what I was currently in, and I pushed myself into something else, an environment that was definitely more conducive for me to grow. And from that point is when I started to get the vision And that's when I kind of looked at my first year. I realized how tough of a year it was for me. And then I saw all of these other people going into first year as I'm going into second year of school. And I kind of just said to myself, I don't want them to go through that. Because I was very lonely, and I could have tried harder. I know that, but sometimes people need to be reached out to, and that's what I had needed. And I know that a lot of people needed that, and that's when you probably saw me really start to shift my personality and my countenance towards others. Whereas in my first year, it was definitely all on myself. And then that gap in between first and second year, when I went back home over the summer, I really got close to God, because funny enough, when I was in my first year of Bible school, I drifted very far away from him. And when I got back, I had all this time to myself, and I just needed purpose again. And I found that in him and in his word, and came back with that vision and in a new environment. And I would say that those are definitely pinnacle things that helped me redefine myself, as you said.
Yeah. So one thing though, a couple things actually. You mentioned that you were lonely in that first year, but
Yeah.
listen, I know because I could see down into your apartment. Y'all had a boatload of people around most of the time. So
Yeah.
here's the reason why I think this is important. In the world we're in today, there are people that are connected to so many people on social media, they're around people, but they say the same thing that you just said. So Hunter, what do you mean by lonely when people are all around you?
Yeah. It's kind of like, it's the same reason celebrities feel depressed and lonely, even though they're completely surrounded by people all over. It's just a lack of depth in a relationship. Um, I think that when everything is surface all the time, hey, how you doing? Oh, good. How are you? Good. That's it, kind of thing. There, you really don't feel valued. You're also not really giving value to the people you talk to. And I think that was just the culture that I was in. It was just like, let's just have fun, run, jump around, and not worry about anything that would even hint at seriousness in a conversation, or what I would consider maybe even restoration into somebody. We could call it ministry, to be honest with you, of just loving people. And I think that was just what I lacked, even though, yeah, there were tons of people around. I mean, we had made a lot of friends, but it was, even though you're seen, you don't really feel seen, kind of thing. Or even though you're known, you don't really feel known, was definitely what I went through. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned a word earlier when we were talking about being a father. You talked about selfish versus selfless. And to me, what you just mentioned kind of described that a little bit, like maybe you were hanging around and it was fun, but it was still all about self. Am I reading too much into that, or is that a possibility?
No, yeah. Because we were like kind of the circle that I was in. We were the young cool guys, I guess. And so it was like, oh yeah, we're the in
Yeah,
crowd, blah blah blah, whatever.
I was in the old uncool crowd, just so everybody understands the
For
dynamics
reference.
of the Bible schools.
Bible school, yeah. And so, like, for a moment that kind of feels good. You're like, oh yeah, people look at us, they think we're cool and whatever. But it really does. It boils down at the end of the day. I'm like, I'm laying my head to rest with zero drive or purpose or vision. And yeah, so like that would be the selfish side of it, right? Like, oh, that feels cool. Like everybody looks at us, um, and everybody wants to come to me, kind of like mentality, rather than kind of the complete opposite. In second year, I separated myself from that. I still had a circle of friends, but it was different, and I definitely ventured out to people and ran to
Right.
people rather than just sitting with my arms crossed, expecting people to
Yeah.
come to me.
For me, I was so impressed when I actually saw the transformation, the redefining, whatever words we want to use, from year one to year two. And then that was, interestingly enough, when you and Dulcie became someone interesting to each other. But before we talk about, because I want to talk about that transition, but before we do, I want to back up. I know your parents, and I know most likely the way you were raised, and I also know you ended up at a Bible school. So I'm going to ask a couple things and just let you kind of take off whichever direction you want to go. But I've wondered often if, obviously, you were trying to find yourself. You were in a Bible school environment, so there were maybe some limits to the amount of exploration you could have done. Maybe we'll say it that way. And I'm wondering, what have you thought through what might have happened had you been in another environment, like a state university or something like that? But then I want you to relate this. I want you to talk about how you were raised and maybe a couple of values that you got from your parents, and some of the strength, and then maybe how you ventured from that a little bit in that year one. You were still in Bible school. You guys weren't, I don't think, getting in too much trouble. Maybe you were down. I could see only so much from the apartment where I was in. But anyway, does that make sense? Can you maybe talk about a little bit of the way you were raised, and had you ever thought about what had your path been a little bit different other than Bible school?
Yeah. So the first one that I kind of felt like I had an answer to was what would have happened if I went to a university rather than, and I like to be honest with myself. And the optimist in me wants to say, oh, I probably would have only had some beers here and there or whatever. But I mean, obviously, like, it's an unknown, but I probably would have made some mistakes that I would have regretted. I don't like that word regret, but some mistakes that I would have looked back on and said, not my finest moments. If I'm just going to be completely honest with myself. But at the same time, I think I've also always known my limits and my boundaries. And I had opportunities before I even went out to Bible college to make probably those same mistakes, and I didn't. So, but it's also different being in a completely other state from your parents too. There's a little more, you feel a little less, a little more untouchable, I guess. So that's kind of a vague answer, but I probably would have made some mistakes, I think. And then as far as my upbringing, I mean, like I said, I grew up in the Baptist church, bit of legalism and religion kind of caked in there. Some that I'm still probably trying to knock off, but taught me good morals. We shifted out of that into what some would call the full gospel movement, charismatic, whatever you want to call it. That was definitely a very defining time for me. I was probably 15. I had gone to the same church all my life. My parents decided they want to switch it. I've kind of had these transition periods. It seems like they happen every couple of years where I'm in a place I'm comfortable. Something removes me or takes me somewhere else. And then I end up growing a whole lot more from it. So then we go to another church, and that's when I really stepped into a lot of leadership and consistency. I think I learned a lot of consistency there, just how to be a consistent person. But then just from what my parents taught me, I mean, my dad is one of the hardest working men I've ever met in my life. Definitely work ethic. And I would say integrity was a big one. And I had actually touched on this before, decisions and the weight of your decisions and how they really do pave the path in front of you. There's always a consequence, whether it's good or bad, to the decisions that you make. Those were definitely some big things that my dad instilled in me. And then my mom taught me grace. I mean, it was kind of a typical mom-dad combo of dad teaches me how to be a man, and mom teaches me how to be kind and forgiving and full of grace. So.
Yeah, that's good. So then to kind of continue the journey a bit, you have a fun year one, you go home for the summer, and then you come back year two, and you've kind of already given us a glimpse, but I mean, you literally changed a tremendous amount of things. I mean, I think I even recall you had changed the way you dressed, you changed the way you carried yourself, you changed the way where you hung out. I think you're living, didn't you even live somewhere different? You said you sort of was hanging out with different people. Tell people, and listen, there are people right now that are listening, Hunter, that they actually don't believe people can make changes like that. Probably not listen to this podcast, but there are people out there that believe that. But go through a few of the steps, two or three things that you said, I am going to purpose to do XYZ or whatever, because I observed it. I may have kind of given a few away just then, but I observed it. But talk about that process, because that is actually a formula for making change throughout our lives. So give us some secrets there.
Um, Definitely, I think it all starts with seeking to understand what you're in. If you don't have an understanding on whether there's an issue or not in your life, or understanding that something needs to change in your life, then you're just going to be stuck in where you are until you get to that point. So if you're not there, get there. Just seek to understand your life. What's coming, what feels hard, what feels easy, what needs to change, and then from there, you. It's kind of funny because it really goes along with the podcast of seek, go, create. I think that's kind of funny how you have it all positioned exactly. I think perfectly. Of you look, you understand what's going on, you go, you execute, and then you create something new to take place of that. And so that's what it was for me. I saw that where I wasn't good. I also opened myself up to people. I had a really good, probably a defining moment in my life, like a coffee meeting with a friend. I broke down crying in front of him, telling him how just horrible my life was at the time. And he's like, man, you got to get out of it. Why are you still there? And I'm like, that's an option. I guess that is an option. And so seeking counsel, getting outside input. A lot of people may not like outside input because it hurts, doesn't feel good. You should almost be addicted to input from other people. Not that you should be defined by everything everyone tells you, but you need outside feedback. And then you just have to put your heels in the ground and go, and determine that nothing's going to get in your way of in between you and what you now know you're pursuing. So I would say that's what I did, at least, and it worked.
Yeah, it was very impressive. And I know along that journey, you ended up, I guess, ministering and pastoring a small church along the way. And I'm gonna ask, I think as I wrap up, I'm gonna ask you about some things related to ministry and what you have done and what you see things as future and some things like that, some vision. But I wanna shift just a little bit, because one of the things that you have moved into recently, and listen, I'll just go ahead and tell people along the way, Hunter met our daughter and they got married, and anyway, so we won't go into all that detail. We're actually going to be interviewing Dulcie. Maybe we'll get her to tell more of that story. But you were in ministry. I'm going to ask you about ministry, but I want to kind of ask you about, you've recently moved into sales, and that's such a different and unique field. Some people don't understand how it relates to even ministry or things like that. But tell a little bit about how you ended up in that. You are doing well at it. I think you would consider yourself successful at it. I don't know if it's like long-term for you, short-term, or just something you're learning, but tell us a little bit about that, because sometimes people don't see how those transitions work.
Yeah. I had helped a friend start a ministry. We called it Untitled. So that's, things that millennials do.
So what's the name of it? I don't understand the name. What's the name?
Untitled. What's the name? So I helped him start it. It was a community that we all kind of needed at that time. We didn't really have much. So we decided we would just create something, and it was really good. He ended up getting married and handed it over to me, and I took it and ran with it and made it my own thing, which that transition, like taking leadership over from another leader, was very difficult. We could go into that, but that's we're a bunch of young guys. We don't know what we're doing, so it was kind of like, hey, I'm done. Hey, you're up. And there was no real transition. It was kind of head first. So that was challenging, but then I kind of got my feet under me and had a really good time. We were doing a lot with it. We were doing outreaches. We were doing videos, and I think I would shoot like 6 videos a day. I had some awesome people that were kind of in that production area that wanted to help with that. And so we were treating it like a church. I mean, we may not have had a 501c3 or any of those kind of formalities, but we were treating it like a church, and we had people coming. We were meeting in a cool coffee shop, and once a week. I mean, it was church, at least what we call church here in our westernized culture. And it was fun. I loved it. But as about a year and a half goes on, Dulcie and I start dating. We end up getting engaged, and we're planning on getting married. And it was kind of like, okay, I think this season is coming up to an end, and it's time to transition away. And at the time, I was doing a lot. I was going to school. I was working. I was co-leading overseas mission trips, and helping prepare for wedding and pastoring and holding meetings and all of this. And I got burnt out. And I remember I preached a message, and it lasted for maybe 10 minutes. And we had a guest. It was so bad. We had a guest musician from another church that came in to lead worship with us, and we were all excited. I got up, preached for about 10 minutes. I don't even remember what I preached on. I was just empty. I hadn't been taking care of myself. I burnt out. I went out into the hallway after I was finished with my message. I just like wept. I could feel it. And I knew that I just wasn't giving what I should be giving to those people. And that was when it was just like, it's time to step down. Sought counsel and got feedback, as I had mentioned, from people much wiser than myself who had been in the position that I'd been in before. And they were all like, you need to get out of it. And so I trusted them, and Dulcie and I talked about it. We knew it was just very crystal clear. That's what we need to do. We need to transition away. And so we did. And we got married, and we're done with Bible school, somehow still here in Colorado. And, now I think, let me just backtrack for a second. I think one thing that I did learn from growing up in church and seeing a lot of different churches and pastors was there was this very consistent, like pastor's kids complex, where not all pastors' kids, but a lot of pastors' kids had a lot of problems. And they were probably feeling neglected by their dad or whoever, mom, whoever was leading in that capacity. And I kind of saw that, and I was like, I never want to be that father or husband. And I kind of had noticed when I was pastoring, I mean, you can get consumed and the community and the vision and the meetings and the growth and all of that. I mean, it will overtake you. Sometimes you end up losing the heart of church in the first place. And I think I saw that, and I'm like, I just need to step away. I just don't have an understanding of this role quite yet. So I don't need to be in it. And I think that the Lord was protecting both of Dulcie and I with that, because we've kind of seen some friends of ours now that have stayed in it, and they're and may even dislike people. And you don't want to get to that place. And so I could have gotten to that place. I really think I could have, but we listened to God. And so now transitioned over and working. I mean, again, wearing a lot of hats. I do a lot of stuff, mobile, online, and then I do sales, which the common factor in sales and pastoring or preaching is your people. You're talking in front of people, whether it's a large group and you've got a microphone, or it's a small group and you're standing behind a table doing fun knife tricks. You're still communicating, and I think one thing that I've definitely learned in sales is how to read people and body language and cues and things, and that will help with ministry. Absolutely. Anything that puts you in an environment with people, whether that's, a job or whatever, in office meetings, or however it is, if you're in a position where you're around a lot of people, that can help you with ministry. And I think that for anyone who wants to be in full-time ministry and feels like they're leaving no impact, maybe at their simple job or what they think is their simple job, like, don't discredit where you're at, and just let God teach you where you're at, and he'll show you many things, and he'll grow you in the areas you need to grow. That's what he's doing with us. I know that. I trust that. I've had my moments. I've had my identity crisis times where I'm like, I'm not doing anything for God. What am I doing? God, am I letting you down? Oh my gosh. And you just got to trust and move when he tells you to move.
Yeah, that's good. And it kind of helps. You kind of teed up the thing that I wanted to go to, kind of as we kind of sort of wrap up on some things, because I want to talk about ministry in general and where you see maybe some things going. I do want to acknowledge first, though, before we wrap up, you actually do a lot of great stuff for Seek Go Create, because the online presence is really almost all yours. All of our website at seekgocreate.com, you keep all of that up and do great things. And if you're listening to this on one of the podcast platforms, Hunter's the one that gets it there. So anyway, I just want to say I appreciate all that. And I know that's one of the many hats you wear, and I know you're doing a lot of things with YouTube and other things like that. But I do want to maybe talk about some of the, you ran a ministry, you had a group of young people. I visited there a couple times. Y'all met in a coffee shop, and you've ministered in other environments. You've traveled and done a lot of cool things. And then we are in 2020 coming out of, hopefully, or have been in a place where a lot of churches have been shut down. Do you have any glimpses of what type of ministry, A, you may be doing in the near future, and then B, what type of ministry might we see in the world? I mean, I know you and I have this discussion from time to time, but what are you thinking right now? What are some leadings you're getting as we finish up 2020 and head into 2021, where we don't necessarily know if pandemic's going away, but anyway, a lot of things going on. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I think, as far as just church in general, I think that we've overcomplicated it. I mean, again, kind of in our westernized culture, there's so many different viewpoints and what's the word I'm thinking of? Opinions that people have on what's church, what's not church. Do we do it in a home? Do we do it in a building? Do we need do we need four walls or whatever, and I think that just for me, right here and now, the word that comes to my mind over and over again, just in our life, whether that's ministry or our family or work, is just to be tactful. I think that God wants us to be tactful with everything we do. I think that unfortunately we do see a lot, not every ministry, but we do see a lot of ministries kind of just shooting from the hip on a lot of things, and get into the whole to close church versus not to close church in the midst of a pandemic and all of that. But really on either side, it's kind of like, no, we're going to open, or no, we're going to close. And I wonder how much thought we're putting into just ministry as a whole, and how much we're letting God lead us rather than kind of this nose to the ground. I'm just going to blast my way through anything in my way. And I think, again, for like ministry for us, I'm completely open at the moment. It could be so many different things. And I think that that's a big thing that I've learned. Whereas going into Bible school, I was like, I got to be a pastor. I got to have a church. I got to have the microphone and the stand and all of that. I don't think that that's the case. I kind of went into Bible school saying, you know what, God, I feel like you told me to start a church in Los Angeles. I've said that forever. I'm open to it still being that, but I'm also open to it not being that if that's not what God wants. I don't know. At the moment, I really don't know. And I'm okay with that. I think that right now, there are so many different places in our culture that we can get love and grace to, that a structured church setting will not be able to do as effectively, especially in the culture we're in. I mean, listen, we've got a lot of weird stuff going on, and we've got a lot of people that hate church. And even just saying that I'm a part of a church, somebody might hate me for it, and I may lose any kind of influence. Now, I'm not going to water who I am down. And if somebody asks me what I think or believe about God, I'll tell them. But I think that just God is calling us, at least us as in my family and I, just to be tactful in ministry right now. And sometimes I know what that looks like. Sometimes I don't. We're just kind of following his leading on that right now.
That's good. So as we'll kind of use this kind of question as a lead into the big theme that we're looking at with these episodes. As you finish up 2020 and kind of look back, obviously a very odd, unique, different year, and everyone is somewhat hopeful that 2021 will, whatever normal means. I'm not really into that word normal, but I don't think we're going back to the way we were in February of 2020. But what are some things, with all the things that you've learned and, new father and all that's happening, what are some things that you're excited about as you head into 2021? And then also, maybe you could even answer this first. What are some things that you're kind of really looking forward to leaving behind in 2020 and not carrying forward? And this will be one of our final questions here as we kind of wrap up.
Yeah. The big thing that Dulce and I had talked about for our family when we started to see the pandemic unfold in front of us, and the closing of all of the things and business and all of that, was we are going to come out of this better and stronger than we did when we went in. So that's definitely expectation number one as we go into 2021. However long this corona stuff lasts, we're not going to let the circumstances dictate our growth or our success. So definitely that's looking forward for us. I've got a few things that I've got kind of in my back pocket that I'm going to work on to get some more kind of another stream of revenue coming in for us and stuff. So we've got vision for that. We would, just for our family, like to be transitioning out of Colorado, but we're being patient on that. And then to leave behind, I think that I would like to leave behind some of the stress maybe that this year has brought. As I mentioned, we declared that we're going to come out of this better than we went in. That doesn't mean that we think that every single day. We have our ups and downs, and I think that definitely leaving just some of that worry behind, and giving things to God. And I feel like I have another thing that I want to leave behind, but I can't put my finger on it quite yet. I mean, we've got a lot going on in the world. Uh, all, you know, we don't need to get into some of these topics, but I think we just we need to leave behind the the divided mentality I think that our country kind of has at the moment. And it starts with acknowledging it. I think a lot of people don't want to acknowledge it. But just, oh, you don't think the way I think? All right, well, I hate you kind of attitude that we're seeing a lot of. It just doesn't help anything. And I think that that's a big thing I'd like to see left behind. I'm going to try to leave it behind because obviously when you encounter someone that thinks differently from you, sometimes you want to resist that. But I think just loving everyone around you, I think that that's what I'll put the expectation on myself for, is just try to not let that mentality of division at least enter my heart.
I think that's good. And I think that, anyway, that's probably a good message for everyone, especially around this time of year. Hunter, I'm curious, I asked this question. I actually was considering not asking, but my final question is usually seek, go, create. I know you've heard it, you've edited things and listened to episodes, but, by the way, do you have a favorite? You've listened to a lot of these. Do you have a favorite? You have a favorite guest that you've heard? What have you really liked?
I think I still really like Jim Cook's. It's the classic. It's so good.
Yeah, I enjoyed that too. So you get to listen to a lot of them. I guess get to might be a good way of saying that. We'll leave it at that. But seek, go, create is our title. Which word means the most, jumps out at you? We talked a little bit about it earlier, but as we wrap up, and which word which word resonates with you? Seek, go, create.
It's definitely seek, just to kind of echo myself from before. I think, I mean, obviously we all love to create. I think that that's definitely probably a big hit. A lot of people love to talk about creating and creativity and everything, but I just feel like you can't have the go or the create without the seek. And there's just something about that attitude. Like I mentioned, seeking to understand what is happening. I think once you seek, then you'll know where to go or how to go. And once you seek, you know what to create or how to create. I think it all just stems from that.
Yeah. Hunter, thank you. Thanks for so many things. I appreciate, number one, just all that you do for what we do here. And so the listener needs to be appreciative for all that you do to make so many things happen. If you're watching on YouTube or listening, Hunter's that guy, man. He's putting all those pieces together, most of those pieces. And so I appreciate that. And I just want to say too, I appreciate the honor and the love and the respect that you show for my daughter and now granddaughter. And we've said this before, that you kind of just brought this peace into our family, and I just appreciate it greatly. So thanks for sharing. Thanks for being a part of this, and looking forward to a great 2021. Any final things you want to say before I wrap up?
I'm right there with you. Let's hit 2021 like never before. Let's not hate 2020. I think a lot of people are like, oh, let's just toss 2020 out the window. I think that a lot of us will end up looking back on this season, I hope, at least with like a reverence and almost a respect, because I think that it's pushed a lot of us to grow. That's usually where growth comes from the uncomfortability. So let's not hate 2020 and look back on it as just this, toss of a year. But let's take what we learned and jump into 2021. We'll make it even better.
Excellent. Well, thanks again for joining, and for those of you listening, we hopeful that you're having a great. This is being released the tail end of November into December. Whenever you're listening to it, this is a holiday season in many parts of the world. We know we've got listeners all over, but for those in the United States, in our parts, it's kind of a holiday time of year. So we're celebrating with some special episodes. The next episode will be my daughter, Hunter's wife, Dulcie, and I look forward to having that conversation. That's going to be incredible. And for those of you that are listening, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm hopeful that this is a great time of year for you. Whenever you're listening to this, that you're gearing up for a great 2021, having a great season, and just keep connecting with us. As we mentioned earlier, go to the website, seekgocreate.com, or any of the socials. We're on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and we are Seek Go Create at all of those places. Thank you again for listening, and we will connect again on the Seek Go Create podcast.